for 9 likes, White Lawrence asks, can you talk about the symbolism of common bad luck, superstition, stepping on a crack, breaking a mirror, walking under a ladder, black cat, spilling salt, etc. And so, you know, the superstitions all have a very, coherent, most of them you have to take for granted actually that most superstitions are quite coherent in terms of meaning. And might sound very weird for people because the fact that such odd things and such odd behavior are transmitted over sometimes centuries, if not millennia, means that there's a meta thing going on in superstitions, uh, which is that there are certain images and there are certain behaviors that if you avoid, then you avoid the worst. And you don't have to understand it through direct causality. If you're a little bit more of a subtle thinker, you can understand that most of these superstitions have to do, like I said, with a kind of meta level. So let's look at the ones you said. So, for example, stepping on a crack, breaking a mirror, walking under a ladder. So all of these things, you can see how they're related to each other, I hope. Let's take the first two ones. So stepping on a crack. Now, it's not just stepping on a crack. Like, there are many superstitions that have to do with not stepping on an intermediary space. So you don't step on a crack. You also don't step on the threshold. The threshold is sacred, right? The threshold is taboo, and you don't step on the threshold. This is like something that's true in so many cultures, where when you pass the threshold, people, this idea that in some traditions, like, people make the doors very short so that you would have to bow when you cross a threshold, because there's a humility about the place where you have to have a certain humility about the in-between places, the places where identities fall apart, and the in-between spaces, because that's like a monster that will devour you, right? That which is the breaking, the broken aspect of it, like the in-between spaces, is something that, if you're not careful, can devour because it expands. Hence, postmodernism, you can expand the in-between space, in order to devour the identity, right? That's what I'm pretty much sure that's what Zeno's paradox is about as well, which is that if you expand the intermediary, the fraction, if you expand that, and then if you move into that too much, and at some point the identity stops to be possible. And so it's the same. Like, so breaking a mirror is not that really complicated. You have something which reflects reality, and you break it. So why? Of course, that would cause bad luck, because you're breaking the reflection of the world. The same with walking under a ladder. So a ladder is a hierarchy, and so instead of going up the ladder, instead of using the ladder, then you kind of walk in the shadow of the ladder. Maybe that's a good way to understand it. Think about, like, the image of the monks going up the ladder of divine ascent, and then there's death under here. And so death is under the ladder because it's the shadow of the hierarchy. It's this part that's not in the hierarchy. It's the aspect that's not in the hierarchy, etc., etc. And so, the same, spilling salt, right? So you have something that's together, and then you spill it, and therefore it's an image of death. You spread the one into the many, and then it just gets everywhere, and all of that is bad luck. And the black cat, that might be harder for people to understand, but it could be other things. But the black cat is in the sense of, in some ways, it has to do with attention, right? It has to do with the if you see something which is an image of death, it means that your attention is falling on it. So you could say something like, you could tell someone something like, if you think of being sick too much, then you'll be sick. It's called hypochondria, but it's a real thing, right? If you attend too much to something, then it will manifest itself. It's kind of like the reverse of The Secret, whatever, that thing that happened in the early 2000s. And so I think that most superstitions are coherent, but like I said, it's not there's a direct correlation. It's, in some ways, it's kind of like the way that I've tried to explain to you ritual in general, and also like a handshake, for example. And so you could say, how ridiculous is the handshake? It's like the most superstitious thing in the world. Will you just touch hands and are your friends? Is that it? Like, you touch hands and you're friends. touch hands and now you trust each other. Is that how that works? Right? How ridiculous is that? But it's engaging in patterns of behavior that then train you to do things. So you could say, so if you, for example, avoid stepping on cracks, if you avoid stepping on the threshold, then you will avoid expanding and you will avoid attending to the in-between spaces. If you are careful not to break mirrors, then you will, in general, be careful not to break things and not to break things that reflect reality. And so you'll have a type of attention which will be careful with certain things. So if you're careful not to spill the salt, then you'll be careful not to spill things, and not just physically, but let's say you'll be careful not to spill things in a bigger sense. And the same, if you're taught not to attend to the black cat, like to not notice the black cat, then maybe you won't bring about negative things. You'll let them go, and you won't attend to them too much to kind of bring them into the world. So that's the way that superstition functions. It's not you have to kind of see it at a bigger level. And it's the same. It's so funny because the people that hate superstition the most are usually kind of Darwinian type rationalists. And it's like, if there's anything that's been selected for, it's clearly superstition. If there's anything that's been selected for unconsciously and that has not been, the whim of one person that like decided to do it that way, but is rather just this emergent behavior that has been kind of developed over centuries, if like I said, if not millennia, probably millennia, then it's superstition. And therefore you should take superstition seriously, and try to kind of understand what it is that they're doing, what's their function, to train behavior towards certain things. That's what I think. So Quinn Wolf in the comment says that stepping on a crack is simply stepping on the threshold of the house. It's the in-between worlds. Yeah, that's exactly right. You've got it. So good call. Yeah, Wyatt Lawrence says spilling salt is a loss of preservation. Overuse turns into destruction. Maybe. I mean, it's mostly about the spreading, but it's true, and it's also because it's white. Like salt is white and preserved, like you said, and it's purifying. And so if you kind of if you drop it, and it just goes all over the place. So good call, folks. All right, so Kyle Biling says, what about salt along windows and doors to keep out evil? Yeah, I mean, all of these make sense. All the gestures that we do on purpose in order to, let's say, keep out evil things, like putting, like for example, house blessings in Orthodox churches. You have holy oil that's put on the walls, and you have holy water that's put, and then the idea, for example, like you said, like of putting salt on the window or something. All of these, I want to be careful that people don't think that I'm saying these aren't real, like that they're affected. They're affected, but they're not affected through mechanical causes, obviously, because salt on a window is not going to stop someone physically from coming into your house. But there's something. It has to do a lot with like the proper attention, and ritual attention is the best type of attention because it's really clean cut towards purpose. And so, okay, so let's just from secular point of view, right? From a secular point of view, in general, is there more a chance that bad things come into your house if you're not careful and you don't care than if you are? And so you could say, so a good example would be locking your door, right? It's like, okay, when you go outside, lock your door. And you'd think, who cares? Lock your door? Like, if someone wants to come into your house and you just lock the door, do you think it's going to stop them if they really want to get in? Just a crowbar in 2 minutes with a crowbar and they'll be in your house. Like, it's not like, our houses aren't castles. People could just get in. And so, but then let me ask you this, like, if you're someone who leaves your door open, let's say, like literally leaves it open, you go away and you just leave your door open, or you don't close it, or you don't lock it, or you leave all the windows open, and you leave your stuff out on the lawn, like you leave your bike out on the lawn, you leave your, like, is there a more of a chance that someone will steal from you? And the answer is yes. There isn't a mechanical causality between you being not careful with your stuff and then someone coming and stealing it, but there is a kind of discipline of action which creates a discipline within yourself, then also perception within others that will help you and will prevent you from being broken into. That doesn't mean that you'll never be broken into. No, that's not how it functions. It's like human things are not machines, but there are certain behaviors you can have that will help. And for example, like getting a blessing, doing things like that, like getting your house blessed, doing all that stuff, all of that, all of these ritual behaviors towards, let's say, towards the care and a desire to express the cohesion of the home and, the direction of the home towards God, all of that will help. It will help. And it's a real thing. It's a real change. It's not, I'm trying to describe it bottom up, and you have to be careful. When I describe something bottom up, I'm not saying there's no top down. Like blessings and curses and prayers have real effect on the way the world lays itself out. So